Hello, one more time, everybody. Welcome to our webinar about how to make decisions in the VUCA world. We're going to speak today about 5 key trends in food industry that are shaping the market in 2026. This webinar will take approximately 30 minutes, plus we will have some time for Q&A session at the end. And also, webinar will be recorded, so you will receive recording right after we finished. Click. Yes. Let me introduce you to who are our speakers today. My name is Anna. I'm from marketing team. I will be supporting crew today. I will help monitoring chart, run the polls, and answering questions if needed. My today's speakers are Shaun.
Hi, my name is Shaun. I'm the Strategic Solutions Specialist at A Insights. And usually in webinars and videos, you see me talking about high-level strategic things. But today I'm joined with an analyst view by my current colleague, Eralp.
Thanks, John. Hi, everyone. My name is Eralp. I'm working as a senior solution consultant and happy to see everyone here.
Great. So that was our short introduction. A little bit about our companies. I see some clients on the list, but for those who do not know, we are A Insights. We recently joined forces with Valona only in 2025, and together our merger is about building intelligence capabilities for companies to make decisions faster and with more security. And we do that by providing a structured qualitative data about what happened on the market, financial performance, and so on, and support it with real-time insights on why something is happening. So teams can focus on turning threats into opportunities, right? So that was a very small introduction. Now, Shaun, stage is yours.
Thank you very much. And welcome to 2026, everybody. Fasten your seatbelts. It's going to be a bumpy ride. But before we begin, what I'd like to do is ask all of you a question. And Anna, if we can please start a poll. And the question is going to be, do you think that 2026 will be business as usual?
Yes, I have started the poll, and you should see it at the right top corner in your chat. Yes, I see some votes are coming in. Let's do it for a few more moments. Yes. Oh, that's interesting.
Share the results.
Yes. Give me a second, because if I share them, yeah, they are still coming. They're still coming.
Okay.
Yes. All right. I think I am ready to share.
All right.
No, they're still coming. Wait. I will give people one more chance. Amazing. Okay. I think we have everybody. Okay. So this is what we have.
Wow. Okay. So interesting result. Nobody said definitely yes. 13% of you said mostly yes. And the other 87% said either uncertain or no. And I'm going to move on to the previous results of this. Could you drop? Thank you very much. So whereas previously we had 92% saying not business as usual, now we have a result of about 87% saying not business as usual. So I think whether it's 92 or 87%, the vast consensus is 2026 is not going to be business as usual. Now, before we start delving into it and talking about the dynamics in the market, let's just check in on some definitions before we begin. And I like to use the zoo to explain what's happening. There's always the rhino. This is things in the market that are obvious but underestimated. So these are your known knowns. Then there's the elephant in the room, the big thing that is there and everybody is aware of, but nobody's talking about. Then you get black swans, which are completely unexpected events, and unicorns, which are exceptional breakthroughs. And this is using Taleb, Lee, and VUCA terminology, but we'll be using the zoo as we go through this. So what? Why are we talking about a zoo? Let's rather talk about what are the 5 things that you can keep in control this year in a volatile market. So let's have a look and see what those issues are. So starting off with GLP-1 drugs and how these are affecting supply and demand, but more on the demand side. The two different dynamics in trade at the moment is tariffs being lifted and tariffs being dropped in free trade agreements. There's an enormous amount of commodity volatility, not just ingredients, and this is causing more margin squeezes. And then there's regulation coming on dietary guidelines and also packaging regulation. So these will be the 5 key topics that we'll be looking at today. So jumping in on GLP-1 drugs and looking at what the issue is here. And before we begin, let's just put this in a little bit of context. And that context is currently 1 in 7 people have a BMI over 30. And as we roll forward to 2040, that's going to change to 1 in 4 people with very, very different impact across the various regions. And where you see the big numbers rising, please look at Asia Pacific, where obesity levels are very, very low, but rising very, very rapidly. So this is in the background context. BMIs over 30 cost you money, cost the health system money, and this is coming at quite a precarious period in our economies. But let's look at the impact of GLP-1 drugs. So if we look at the numerator study in the US, which looked at 150,000 households, what they saw was, on average, a 5% drop in grocery spend if there was 1 person in the household taking GLP-1 drugs. This is on top of a surge in fresh produce increasing at 70%. Now, when it comes to eating out, and specifically in QSRs and limited services restaurants, there we see that 5% go up to 8%. And if we look at categories that are calorie dense, like ultra-processed foods, that goes up as high as 10%, and smaller categories within that, like desserts, you see an 84% drop-off on desserts and about a third decrease in alcohol consumption. Once again, these are having impacts on other industries as well. So we see the glass industry that is trying to deal with the reduction in alcohol consumption. Now, currently in the US, this is about 1 in 10 households, so about 11% of households have somebody on GLP-1 drugs. If we jump across the Atlantic to the UK, we see that much lower at 4%, but these numbers are changing really fast. Data is still very immature in this, and as we roll forward, we'll be seeing more and better data as more studies are done on this. Even so, there's a 1/3 dropout, and people that drop out of GLP-1 drug usage tend to get higher caloric purchases after that. Now, if we look at the impact of this on certain categories, Eralp, what can you tell us about the bakery category?
Yeah, thanks, Shaun. Throughout the presentation, I'll be giving some case studies into specific industries, starting off with the bakery. So what we see is that we see 4 impacts of GLP-1 drugs on the bakery industry. The first one is the demand for protein-rich products. We see companies investing heavily in R&Ds to launch high-performance protein solutions. The second one is the shift to small but nutrient-dense portions. The third one is the multisensory textural contrast demand. We see that companies leverage premium fillings, coatings, and inclusions to maximize the sensory impact. And the last one is the focus on premium and the artisanal quality. And if we move to the next page, we see that the companies in the bakery industry have already responded to the GLP-1 trends. Starting off with the Bacaldian, we see that they already start to emphasizing high protein, high fiber products, which is already in their portfolio, which is a focus change when we look at that. The second one is the Zelendia. They actually address the GLP-1 need through their incremental fortification and performance enhancers. Looking at the CSM part, we see that they introduced the sugar reduction solutions to reduce or even eliminate the sugar. And the last but not least, Down Foods, like CSM ingredients, they also introduced the less sugar products like their new cookie mix with 30% reduced sugar. And when we move to the next slide to see some statistics, what you see in the top graph is a reported decrease in the bakery consumption. There is overall a decrease of 77% in the overall food, but the most impacted one you can see on the very right is the prepackaged sweet baked goods. And what you see at the bottom is the change spending index during active GLP-1 usage. There is a comparison between the before the GLP-1 drug and the after one, after it. The baseline here, you see 100, is the people that do not use GLP-1. So as an example, 110 means actually 10% higher compared to those people. And the conclusion here is that those who historically over-index in bakery are now driving steep declines like dough and snacks. And Shaun, do you have any other examples?
Well, I think in preparation for this, what I saw was some comments from Conagra in the research and a report that they put together. And this summed it up for me as concisely as I could find. So rising demand for protein-forward, portion-controlled, and nutrient-dense foods, especially amongst Gen Z and millennials. I think that's probably the biggest call out here. But additional to that, we are seeing this is starting to impact financials. And what we've seen recently, in fact, this morning, is that from Reuters reporting that there's going to be an increase in capital expenditure, not only in production capabilities, but in R&D. And what this has done is it sent the stock prices into a flurry. And here you can see the different impacts on stock prices after March 2025 with the rising number of GLP-1 drugs and their mentions in financial reports. So clearly this has got a material impact on the stock market already. Now, if we sum this up and turn this into something actionable that you can use, let's have a look and see what pieces we have on the table that we can put together. So if we look at total number of population or households within a region, and we then multiply that by the penetration per household or per user, times the retention rate, times the baseline consumption, obviously, and then the different impacts per category or segment or demographic, you get to the total impact on consumption or spend. Now, looking at all of these all the time is going to be a lot of work. So let's focus in on where the difference is, and that is on the biggest variable here, which is the rising penetration in households. So if we can track that very, very closely in geography and time, we can see what the projected impact will be and utilize this information in forecasting as well, because there will be big differences in the impact on different food categories in different regions at different times. Could you sum it up a little bit better than that for me, Eralp?
Yes, sure. Actually, we have 4 strategic takeaways for you. The first one is the product reformulation to reduce the sugar or the calories. The second one is focusing on the protein and fiber-rich products in line with the trend we see in the industry. The third one is really important, along with the product updates, shift the messaging in marketing towards the healthy product promotions. And the last one is the develop small portion items, especially in snacking and appetizers area.
Great. So got to ask the question, only 4 strategic considerations. What other strategic considerations are there in 2026? Now, I know a lot of you are spending all your time doom scrolling, and our collective attention spans have got a bit short. So here's an attention break in the webinar for you. And what we've done is we've tracked 200 plus events or decision moments in 2026 that could be economic, political, regulatory, even social, and put this into a report for you called our Strategic Themes 2026 report. And together with this, we've also included a spreadsheet with all of the data. Now, some of you, especially business leaders, are saying, what on earth do I do with a spreadsheet full of data? Easy solution in 2026, just throw this into your favorite LLM. And there's my little picture of feeding robots the right information, because I have seen so many hallucinations from AI. Let's rather feed the AI with good data. And at this point, you can say, well, tell me, ChatGPT, what is happening in Q2, Q3, Q4 of 2026 from a political, from a legal, from a regulatory perspective, etc. And just use this as you would using ChatGPT, but using good data going into it. So thanks for your attention. Let's get back to the webinar. And we're going to move on to free trade agreements and tariffs in trade wars. So on the short term, what we've seen is a lot of tariffs being raised, lowered, raised again, lowered again. And this is giving us a lot of volatility and causing inflation in the market as well. But this is not the only action on tariffs. What we have as well is we have enormous amounts of bilateral trade agreements being signed. And on top of that, the accumulation of very large multilateral trade agreements that are in play. Now, if we look at the impact of all of these together, what we end up with is moving from a very bilateral focused world to a multipolar world, which is more multilateral. And here, please, there are many different trade agreements, which I've not listed here. I'm just trying to keep it nice and simple that you can see. But it's turned us into a very regional world in terms of trade, with many players like the UK and India, specifically with big agreements across that. Probably the biggest agreement that's on the page over here is the EU-Mercosur, which was agreed in January this year, but has been thrown back to the courts, and that will be in process for the next 12 months, approximately, before we see the outcome of that. Now, additional to multilateral trade agreements, we also have BRICS, which has always been Brazil, Russia, India, China. South Africa joined in 2011. And since then, there's also been Egypt, Ethiopia, Iran, UAE, Indonesia, and Saudi. But please note, this is not a trade bloc. This is an economic partnership, but it's still something to consider in terms of a changing world order and a different division to trade than what we've seen before. One thing I would like you to think about when we're talking about trade agreements and FTAs is that FTAs are very, very different from each other in terms of timing, in terms of tariff regimes, in terms of actual commodities themselves. And a single agreement might have multiple different layers of adjustments to tariff regimes. So please keep an eye on this. And if this is something that you would like more conclusive information on, please reach out to us and tell us what you'd like to see. Also, one caveat on this is not all tariffs do go to zero. Even if the majority do, there will still be commodities and products that do not get preferential treatment on tariff reduction. All right, so from tariffs causing instability in the market, that kind of flows over into commodity volatility. And this is going to end up with a bit of a margin squeeze as well, because from a consumer point of view, there's downward pressure on pricing and consumers making different choices that are more affordable to them. At the same time, we see the system wanting to push prices up. And in between that, there's a squeeze coming for companies. But Eralp, this is at a high level. Could you maybe talk us through the different industries and what the impacts are?
Yes, definitely. Let's go with the frozen potatoes. So what we see is that frozen potato prices continue to be high relative to general food prices, making the category relatively expensive and therefore pressuring the demand in an inflationary consumer environment. But before moving into the next page, Shaun, do you have any comments on this?
Yeah, so obviously I've been in frozen potato for quite some years, and this has been my entire world. And now at AA Insights, looking at all of the other food industries, we're seeing the same patterns. So different levels, but there's this pricing hump that kind of starts somewhere in February 2022 for very obvious reasons. And here we saw energy prices going through the roof, and this has impacted our affordability of food quite significantly. Just a moment to reflect on this one. I've heard a lot of people saying that the regulatory burden of reporting on things like sustainable measures is the reason for a decline in profitability, which is true, but to be fair, a very, very small impact. Whereas we see energy prices really showing us record inflation globally that we really haven't seen before. But perhaps you can tell us more about potato, Eralp.
Yes, sure. Then we go to the next page. Obviously, when you look at the pricing side, you can imagine that part of it actually is caused by the high raw material prices, which what we see in this slide actually, processing potato prices in Belgium. But we're expecting a contract price decline of 70% in Belgium in the next season. So it will take away some of the pressure there. But I'm hoping to see the same bumps in the other industries, Shaun. Do you have any other example?
Yeah, certainly. You can see exactly that in milk as well, in dairy, exactly the same hump, and pretty much the same dynamics as in frozen potato as well. And that is supply is on the increase, demand is down, and when supply is up and demand is down, that means that the price position is weakened. And this is happening not just in the food industry. We're also seeing this in many other industries as well. This seems to be the dynamic of the day. Now, if we look at what else is impacting this in the dairy sector, there is an impact from regulation. And here where we see herd sizes decreasing because of regulatory requirements, we're also seeing significant demographic shifts with an aging Europe and people choosing different products, and also labor shortages as a result of that demographic shift as well. Then on the climate side, and in a year where we have El Nino, we also need to be aware that rising heat causes heat stress in dairy, and cows' milk production declines during those periods. And if there's a heat wave, then the yield decline just soars through the roof. So with all of these in dairy, Eralp, what is the impact?
Yes, let's look at the supply side, obviously, on the milk production. So by OECD, we know that 47% of the global milk production is coming from Asia, India and Pakistan specifically. But in the following 15 years, it is forecasted to be going up by 8 percentage points, which is actually Asia is gaining from Europe, 6 percentage points and 1 percentage point from North America. What we see is that Asia is forecasted to be growing by 3% CAGR in the following 15 years, while Europe will be stable and North America will be increasing by 1%. And in the next slide, actually, once again, on the costs, we have six key input costs for the dairy market. What we see is that, as Shaun was telling, European milk prices were on the rise, along with the labor costs. But on the other 4 elements, meaning energy, packaging costs, feed costs, and the logistics and freight costs, are stabilizing. That was the dairy piece, but we have a very good example from the bakery. As you all know, from early 2024 to 25, we've seen a cocoa crisis in the industry. And when we tap into the Nestle, Mondelez, and Barry Callebaut's annual reports, earning updates, we've seen responses from these 3 big companies. And actually, company responses are 2. One is the reformulation, and the second one is the packaging changes. When we look at the examples, Nestle preferred the product reformulation, and Mondelez did a bit of both, while Barry Callebaut takes a different direction from the other 2 and focused on the long-term R&D cocoa alternatives. The one they actually tried is the fermented sunflower seeds as part of non-cocoa solutions. And Shaun, do you have any other commodity examples?
I think before we do, I'd like to ask you a question. We see cocoa prices going from 2,000 euros a ton up to nearly 11,000 euros a ton. What is the update on this, Eralp?
You're right. And it is actually right now 2,770 tons as the latest price. We've seen roughly 11k tons, 11k euros, sorry, per ton, but now it is reduced to 2,770.
I come from Africa, and there we used to these inflation deflation cycles. And I got to tell you, the ride up the hump is fun and really exhilarating. The ride down is often painful in the market. But if we expand this, and thank you for your question, Eralp, if we expand this to all food commodities and we start looking at the FAO food price index, what we can see is in time, economic and political instability really ends up in high prices to consumers. And we saw this from September 2001 all the way to the financial crisis. Then we saw a dip with COVID, but after the Russia-Ukraine issue, we've seen the volatility come back in pricing. And where this might go in 2026 is anybody's guess. But as we say, there's going to be two different forces with consumers and with commodities pushing against each other. Now, let's move on to dietary guidelines. And specifically, the big call out here is going to be reformulation. But let's have a look and see what this is all about first. So starting with ultra-processed foods, we also see high fat, sugar, salt in focus. But this is kind of morphed into LHF, which is less healthy foods. And here specifically, we see an advertising ban in the United Kingdom on LHF before 9 o'clock at night, before the watershed. And we also see the NHS really trying to motivate better purchases, especially for parents with children. And then on the front of pack side, we see a lot of activity in 2026 with Canada, Australia, the US, and India specifically putting new labeling on their packaging. But we'll deal with the front of pack a little bit later in the packaging side. So let's climb into dietary. And I think a lot of you are asking the question, why are we talking about UPF's ultra-processed foods in 2026? So this issue starts in 2016 in Brazil with the NOVA classification system, which does seem to be a very robust way of measuring the quality of the food that we eat. But it ran into a problem very quickly, which was precise definitions that can be legislated. And this has effectively been a roadblock for ultra-processed foods and why we see more on the high-fat, sugar, salt side. But then with the changing administration in the United States and all of the complexity that comes with that, we have seen California banning ultra-processed foods from its education system, feeding system. On top of that, we also see the impact of GLP-1 drugs and the impact on consumption. So ultra-processed foods has kind of gone from being this very amorphous dark cloud into something that is really impacting us materially in 2026. Now, Eralp, can you tell me once again from one of our industry verticals, how is that perceived?
Yes, definitely. So we prepped actually 4 main topics to explain the ultra-processed foods here. The first one is the consumption of the high-income nations are really high at the moment, yet the growth is slowing down. On the other hand, looking at the other side, low to middle income countries, the growth is really high, obviously, as UPFs are generally significantly cheaper than the healthy fresh food, and the current inflation levels obviously do not help. As the third trend, we see that the World Health Organization and UNICEF calling governments to limit UPF availability in the market by regulations. And as the last trend, the health issues have been rising, which clearly limits the consumption nowadays. And speaking of actually health concerns, we have a survey conducted by European Institute of Innovation and Technology with 10,000 people across 17 European countries. And there are 4 key questions around the ultra-processed foods, but the conclusion is simple. Minimum of 65% of the respondents think that UPFs are not healthy and can be harmful for their future. And Shaun, tossing back to you, what is your 2 cents on GLP-1 drugs and ultra-processed foods?
Well, looking at everything that we've discussed so far, I think there's 3 key callouts here, and the one is definitely reformulation towards more natural foods and a reduction in the number of artificial ingredients in our food as well. This at one point was part of the definition of ultra-processed foods, was 5 ingredients or less, but that's moved on. More authentic food and less processed food is in demand. And from a bakery point of view, this would be like artisanal bakery. And catering for very, very specific needs, specifically more protein, but also more fiber is going to be a requirement as well. So moving on from dietary regulation to packaging regulation, which does intersect with it quite a bit. And putting this to you in a way that says it's not just about changing packaging, it's about the fact that these changes in packaging and changes in regulation mean a lot of work for your marketing teams, your product development teams, even your commercial and sales teams. But let's have a look and see what this is. So in 2026, the changes that we see are the EU deforestation regulation. We also see PFAS that's been removed. And you'll see a little fire extinguisher over there. So in 2026, specifically fire extinguishers are in focus. And for many of our industries, and specifically for potato processing, fires are a common problem. And usage of fire extinguishers can also lead to, let's say, ground not being used to grow crops for quite some time. There was a fire in Belgium 11 years ago. Fire extinguishers were used with PFAS, and those surrounding areas still can't be planted with products. Then more in the UK with the extended producer responsibility, and an overlap on the EU side as well, but EU also with the packaging waste regulation, packaging and packaging waste regulation that comes in, and all of the rules around recycling. So this came into effect in 2025, but effectively begins on 12th of August, 2026. Then in the UK, there's also the deposit return scheme on glass. And then we get to the front of pack stuff where we see Canada, United States, Australia, and India with new front of pack labeling. And if we start looking at all the different types, we see that in South America, in the UK and various other countries, in the EU, in the north of Europe, and in the US, we have very, very, very different packaging solutions. So once again, this is almost like another way of stopping you from having packaging available in multiple countries that looks exactly the same. Your packaging will need to be very regional based on this. And what I see when I look at this is it's the same dynamic with plugs. So there's no USB-C solution on front of pack nutritions. So we're going to have to deal with different packaging in different regions. And if we look and see what that is, we see that there's approximately 40 countries in 2026 that have got front of pack on the agenda. And if you go through this and understand this, you'll understand that this is bringing a level of complexity into our market as well. So let's have a look and see what are the biggest challenges on packaging in 2026. Is it your business as usual issues like cost, quality, and reliability? Or is it not business as usual issues like regulatory and sustainability compliance, having to design and innovate your way through the problem, and even then get asymmetric regulation in multiple regions? And we're almost at the end, which means that it would be time for the executive summary. Apologies, today we're not going to do an executive summary. What we are going to do is just create an action checklist, because this is ongoing and you really need a finger on the pulse going forward. So we're suggesting 5 questions to monitor throughout the course of this year. So first of all, how is the penetration of GLP-1 evolving across time and geography? Do you have a comprehensive overview on tariffs and FTAs that are affecting your products in various markets? Do you have supply and costing scenarios on different commodities that affect your end product? How are you tracking regulatory changes? Is this a compliance issue? Or are you giving this enough thought to turn them into an opportunity? And lastly, do I have an overview of packaging changes across regions as well? And this is just avoiding surprises, last-minute surprises. And if we bring all of this together, obviously the A Insights portal can help you out a lot with this. So first of all, we have the radar, we have financial analysis, you can get focused email digests, you can speak to experts, and you can move from ad hoc to continuous monitoring through proactive market intelligence. Now, why do we talk about proactive market intelligence? Because you can spot the rhinos and the elephants on the distance. You're not going to be able to spot swans and unicorns. And unfortunately, this means that when it comes time to make a decision, if you do not have the right opportunity in place and you haven't developed those threats into opportunity, you're going to be reactionary and ad hoc in your decisions in the market.
Thank you, everybody. Then hope to see you more at our webinars. If you will have a question or want to discuss something, this is your QR code. You can scan it and fill a contact form to get in touch with us, and hope to see you at other webinars. Thank you, Eralp.
Thank you very much.